Okay, good morning. Morning, Chris.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome everyone to our much anticipated webinar, the Shopper View 2025. Over the next 50 minutes, we're going to be delving into our latest data set and examining how key developments or key trends are developing and shaping the way we shop. Taking us through the discussion will be Chris Adkins and Martin Bapti, who have over 45 years of combined industry experience in shopper and category. Chris's supplier side experience spans global giants, including Mondelez, Mars, Kraft, and Coca-Cola. And Martin, whose career started flogging beer out the back of a van, did progress and has held senior sales and category positions at Carlsberg, Bulmers, AB InBev, Warburton's, which was a 7-year stint as category development director. Is that right, Martin?
No, not quite, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't want to undersell you. No, I've oversold him. 5 years, just 5 years. Lastly at Samworth Brothers before leaping over the fence 4 years ago to join Shopper Intelligence on agency side. Both of these gentlemen now support our current clients across core grocery, fresh, healthcare, beauty, household, impulse, bakery, soft drinks, alcoholic drinks, giving them a wealth of experience right across the store and unquestionable authority to speak about category and shopper. And chaps, you'll be pleased to see I've got some better headshots of you.
Yeah, no comedy pictures today.
Yeah,
they were giving me a bit. They were giving me Sesame Street vibes, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh.
So we've got you looking like the professional that you are. Now, unlike our monthly category hack series, this webinar is going to be much more about the data and much more about the insight, a little bit less about the how-tos. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about where the data you're going to see in this webinar is coming from. It's going to sound a lot like a sales pitch, but I promise you it's not. It is just to give you context and confidence in the data that you're about to see. So bear with me. Where does the insight come from then? So we run a quarterly shopper tracking survey that goes out to shoppers post-shop online, and it is an in-depth comprehensive interview on the full path to purchase for that category in that retailer for the respondent. We cover all major retailers down to a category level, to 225 categories are covered in total, and samples are robust. So we're not talking just a light dusting of 6,000 to 7,000 shoppers. We're talking 70,000 to 80,000 shoppers interviewed every year. We've been doing this for over 15 years, over 1 million interviews conducted. That makes us the biggest and longest running shopper tracking survey in the UK. And what do we deliver? Well, we deliver category, brand, and segment insights. All of these benchmarked and in the context of the average category or against the department or against a custom competitive set. And thinking about those samples, this enables you to go to your retailers with indisputable shopper facts. We support this with expert opinion, and you're going to get a flavour of that expertise on this webinar. And all of this is packaged onto an online data tool, which we use to slice and dice the data and really pull out the stories that are unique to that category. And that's what we've actually done for this webinar. So we haven't gone out and researched these themes independently. They have all been pulled out from a wider path to purchase survey and a wider path to purchase perspective. And we've asked the tool, what is the story that the data is telling us? So that's what you're going to see in this webinar. In terms of questions, use the chat function as much as you like. It would be great to get some questions coming in. Drive the discussion as much as you can. And I think that's it. What else do I need to say?
I was just going to give you a hard time over that little logo you've got for expert opinion. Is that what you when you type in expert opinion? You get
that's what I think
like that.
When I think of you, Martin.
I'm sure I've seen you in a bow tie, Martin.
I should have had my bow tie on today, right enough.
The last thing to say, so we're using our latest MAT to Q2 2025 data set. That's what you're going to be looking at. One more thing. Halfway through the webinar, we're going to pause, have a little break. There's going to be a quiz and a chance to win some prizes. So pay really close attention to everything that's being said. We're going to ask you a question about something that would have already been said or shown within the webinar. And the prizes are awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun, as is listening to these two chaps take us through the discussion. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to you, Chris, to take us forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that intro, Mike. And good morning again to everybody. Yeah, I'm going to get us going and take us through. So the plan for the session is to cover these topics. We've got a lot of stuff to cover here. So when we have that little break in the middle, we might take a little poll and see which is the most important one left to do, because we might not be able to do all of them justice otherwise, but we'll see how we get on. So first of all, we're going to kick off with a look at the generational divide. And I'm going to start that actually not with some of our data, but with some data from the ONS, just to kind of, I guess, make the point that we probably all know, I guess, and that's that we are a sort of aging population. And it's predicted that in the next 7 years, we'll see a 14% increase in pensionable age population. And there'll be a decline in children. And actually, if you look further forward than that to 2047, that's even projected to go up by 26%. So the population is getting older, I guess is our first message from this. And that's significant, really, because it's those older generations that hold all the wealth. So again, looking to the Office of National Statistics for this and looking at household wealth over a couple of years from 2020 to 2022, it's those older groups, pensionable age, but also some of the older workers who hold all that wealth. So it's important that we think about that generational divide and that older group of shoppers.
Amazing, isn't it?
It is quite crazy, yeah.
I guess one thing that might change over time in the longer term is that the people that are of pensionable age will actually potentially have a little bit less because of the way that pensions work now, but that's another story.
Essentially because they're living longer, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, I guess the message is, as we start to look at the data, is clearly understanding the differences in how those groups shop. And if we really sort of divide it out into the Gen Zers, and we've talked about the Gen Zers before on webinars, and the boomers, you've got two quite different groups of people and shoppers. Gen Zers obviously being much more into kind of digital and social media and maybe a bit more anxious and pessimistic, versus your boomers with your sort of more traditional values and as I said, financially strong and a bit more optimistic potentially. So understanding that is really quite key. A few simple steps, obviously, to understanding that, and that's kind of the format that we'll go through in the next few slides. What are those big differences? So certainly the data can help us identify what they are. And then the key bit really for you guys as individuals is how does that play out in your category? And what does that ultimately mean you need to do to drive growth? So we'll give you kind of few thought starters on all of that as we go through. So if we divide the two groups up and we look at some of our metrics, then what we see first of all is actually boomers as a group, they're much more intentional with their shop. So they're much more likely to tell us they plan to buy. They're much more likely to be using a loyalty card or loyalty app in their shopping. Whereas in Gen Z, it's more in the moment, as we know, but that translates into things like being way more likely to buy to use immediately. So buying for right now, to eat now, to consume immediately, and be much more likely to be influenced by adverts. We all know how many adverts we see on different social media apps these days. So much more likely to be influenced by that as well. So clearly already just those two groups are different in terms of the things we start to think about. Gen Zers usage and eat now usage particularly is something to think about in terms of innovating. If they're really more influenced by adverts, then we need to think about how in-store can link to those adverts to help them close that buy. Whereas for boomers, obviously, we should be thinking more about things like loyalty as targeting and really working to get on the shopping list in the first place. So quite different actions already from just that first bit of data.
I think the Gen Z numbers sort of make sense. Yeah, you kind of imagine that. I think the loyalty card usage is interesting as well. We just added that, haven't we, into survey this year. And it's really interesting what's coming out.
It is, absolutely. We'll get into some more detail on that as we go along. Yeah, in terms of engagement in store, that's and we would classify that essentially as those who are much more willing to browse and spend time. That's much more likely amongst Gen Zers. So 33% versus 25%. Boomers more focused, more on the grab and go. But interesting, we look at the trends on that as well. There is a big change, particularly amongst boomers. Oh, what's going on
there?
They've lost the deck. Is that you, Mike, playing around while we're talking?
If faffing around about that, I'm going to put it back in there for you.
Just while we're on the subject,
we're trying to stream this live on LinkedIn, and it's not quite worked out. So I'm trying to sort that out. Poor guys on LinkedIn can't see the deck. Okay, it's back with you, Chris. Sorry about that.
While we're on the subject of browsing, Chris, I had a look in a bit more detail at the browsing insight, and it is really interesting. Is that it's grown really steadily over the years. So whilst we're comparing against the growth numbers there, comparing against 5 years ago, which was COVID, so you'd expect it to have grown since then. I think actually it has been a steady increase over time, and it's grown in groceries, grown in online, and it's grown in discounters as well. So it's grown across channels.
Interesting. Thank you. Good stuff.
There's we've had a question from Dan and Lorna here. Just the sample is about 80,000 for this latest year, Lorna. So it's a lot, as Mike said at the start. It's a lot of shoppers we're talking to here. Dan, in terms of your question around why are we comparing boomers to Gen Z, there's loads of things that we could talk about today, but as we were looking through the data that we have and the shopper responses that we have, we very much noted this quite significant difference between boomers and Gen Z. So we thought we'd pull that out. There's been a lot of discussion about Gen Z in the past across a lot of different webinars. So we thought we'd actually start to then compare them to boomers and start to talk about actually what more could be done to unlock some of the boomers who are becoming increasingly more important. I hope that answers your questions. In terms of millennials, we could have a look at that as well. We're just not covering that now. Hope that answers your questions.
Thanks, Martin. So they're more engaged, but that is changing. And loyalty, we see loyalty in terms of, am I willing to do most of my shopping at this retailer, is much stronger in boomers. And that seems to be something that's widening in terms of a gap as well over time. So if we compare that back to 2020, we're looking at 2025, as Mike said now, that gap has widened as well. So these boomers are tending to be more loyal. Ultimately, in terms of what they want and what's important to them, both of those groups, whether it's Gen Z or boomers, their sort of key priorities, their top two priorities, high quality, the best prices, so quality and prices basically, and that doesn't really change, and that's typically what we would see for every group and for every category.
And quality is the most important thing of those two, yeah?
Correct, it is. Quality above the price.
And we've seen both grow. Again, we've seen both grow over time. We've seen a lot of things grow in importance, as we covered in a previous webinar about the ever-demanding shopper. We've seen both of these grow, and quality is more important. What's meant by quality? Just so everybody understands what we mean by quality, we ask further questions about that. And actually, so it's pretty much, you can split it down the middle between edible and non-edible. In the edible, food and drink quality, when shoppers talk about quality, is very much all about the best possible taste and the best possible ingredients. When it's non-edible, it's much more about the efficacy of the product. So does it deliver better than and it is better than expected for both of these things.
Very good. So they are the same for both groups, but then if you go outside of that, then things start to change. And if we look at essentially the third, fourth, and fifth most important priorities for those two groups, we can see that for Gen Zers, Range is number 3, and then it's healthy options and navigation, ease of find. Range and navigation are both important to boomers as well, but not anywhere near to the same levels. This is significantly more important to Gen Zers, whereas for boomers, layout, ease of shop, when I get to the fixture, it's easy to find what I'm looking for, is what becomes significantly more important. And health is then very interestingly much more important to Gen Zers and comes into the top 5 and doesn't actually make the top 5 for boomers. So clearly, again, thinking about implications, choice, lots of choice, focusing on health, that kind of stuff. Is really key for Gen Zers versus boomers, where it needs to be more about ease of shop, ease of find, avoiding frustration, and just making the whole process as simple as possible.
Entry of healthy options is really key, I think. I've had a couple of questions. How do they reconcile quality and price? Well, hopefully this answers your question. We measure how important these things are to shoppers, and then we can compare the responses, and that gives us a sort of which one's first, which one's second. In terms of quality, hopefully I've explained what quality means. And when we're talking about price in this instance, we have a number of different metrics that help us understand overall price, which we'll get to. But that one in particular is about great ongoing prices. Hopefully that answers your question, Andrea.
They're certainly not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, price,
not mutually exclusive.
Just a good price is not good enough. It needs to deliver on quality as well.
And it depends by category very much as well. Navigation and layout differ. Lorna, you asked. Navigation is about ease of find in store in terms of category find, and layout is about ease of shop at the fixture. Okay.
Right. Moving on from that. So we see that ease of shop and ease of find is more significant for boomers. That does also translate a little bit into availability as well, that kind of easy experience. So we see across a couple of other metrics how important availability is. And that's much more important to the boomers group. So always being able to get what I've come in for, and also kind of at home availability. So I don't want to run out of specific products is much more likely to be getting strong agreement from boomers versus Gen Zers. So that whole piece around not having difficulty finding, but also it always being there is key for that boomer group.
Couple of questions. Monica's asking about healthy products. We're just asking him. It's the shopper's view of healthy products that we're looking at here. It's just looking at the statement around healthy products. So it could well vary. And Simon, you've asked about brand play a role for Gen Z. Yeah, we can look into all of that. We're just not looking into that in this deck here. So yeah, there's lots of potentially plays more of a role. I'll have to look into that for you.
Cool. Let's carry on because we don't want to run out of time even on the first section. So the next part of that then is, does the boomer trait play out in my category? What I've done here is just look at a couple of categories that would sit amongst the top 5 categories on some of these boomer traits. So these are the things we've talked about. Boomers heavily planned, boomers more focused on grab and go, boomers more likely to drive loyalty, more focused on layout as a priority, and availability being key for them. And then we've just got a few examples, and these would be categories that sit in the top 5 when we look at those metrics. So in terms of being the most planned categories, eggs and frozen vegetables would be amongst the top 5 most planned categories. In terms of like driving loyalty, then fresh pork and soft berries would be amongst those categories. So this is what we'd be doing next, is then looking at our specific category. Obviously, I can't go through a full category now, but that's when we then start to think about what can we do as a result of knowing some of this stuff. Do they buy my category? How is it trending over time? Is it changing? Is it becoming more the case or less the case? Which of those specific traits that we just talked about do they actually exhibit? And is that different to norms for my category? Because the other thing to say is, heavily planned, drives loyalty, focused on grab and go. That just could be what your category is all about. And it might not be the fact that it's an older generation that is driving that. And then the next piece is then how do I adapt the category to prepare for that stuff? And I've just done one very, very simple example for that, randomly picking out frozen vegetables. So if there's anybody from frozen vegetable companies here. This is for you. So obviously Boomers do buy the category, but actually that's at higher levels than you would see for frozen generally. So they're more likely to be buying that than they are buying other frozen categories. And that's also increasing over time when we look at the trend of that thing as well. And then when we look at the specific traits and behaviours, they're heavily planned, they're focused on layout, they're focused on availability, which are things we know that we should expect. And that is significantly more than norm for the frozen vegetables category. So our benchmarking by measuring all the categories can tell us that kind of information. So we know that it is quite significant. So we know there's potential opportunity in there. And then we need to think about actions from that. And maybe we should be thinking about stuff like marketing messages and making sure we're targeting more pre-store, because we know that Boomers are thinking about the category and planning before store. And then focusing like core SKUs, for example, onto a really simple layout that covers the stock holding and maximizes availability as well. So just some simple tweaks like that can start to improve things.
Chris, we've had a question about how we're defining loyalty. So I think that'd probably be a good thing to actually cover now, because we're going to talk about loyalty a bit more, aren't we? So.
Yeah, so and so in the case of this one, we were looking at the percentage of shoppers who are saying, I do most of my shopping of this kind, most of my grocery shopping at this retailer. So when it's of
this kind, it's in the specific category that they're responding to as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're responding to, in our questionnaire, in terms of the very detail, they're responding to one category purchase. And we're asking them that question. So we're looking for the proportion of shoppers who are saying, yeah, when I'm buying this and doing this kind of shopping, i.e. grocery shopping,
my regular shop. Yeah,
this is my regular shop.
And then we're rolling it all up to look at this level.
Correct, yeah. And that leads us nicely on to section 2, which is private label brands and driving loyalty. So let's crack on, and hopefully you're all still with us. So yeah, looking at this section, interesting when you start thinking of this section, and obviously loyalty cards are a really big thing now. So loyalty schemes are, I guess, are very important, and no doubt you all kind of wrestle with decisions about those all the time. So does a loyalty program really drive shopper loyalty? These are the sort of things, I guess, that we were thinking about as we put this section together. Or maybe actually it's better to have strong private label. Don't mind the loyalty from a loyalty card, we'll get the loyalty from having a really good quality private label offer. Or could it be that actually the best thing to do is have really good, strong brands with lots of marketing support, because that's going to be stuff that people are going to see on TV and whatever else, and that's maybe going to drive loyalty. So, you know, let's have a look, I guess, and see. The first thing, I guess, to say is in terms of like driving traffic, so getting me to go to store, loyalty cards don't actually do that at all. That's not something that when you look at users of a loyalty card or loyalty app compared to the group of users who don't use a loyalty card or app for their purchase. So remember, what we're doing here is we're taking our full database and we're slicing that data by that specific question that we've asked. Have you used a loyalty card or app today? So those that do, about 44% likely to agree with our traffic driving statements, as in it's kind of bringing me into store essentially. And those that don't are basically the same. And really, I guess the conclusion there is no, because it's the category really that drives that kind of traffic thing. It's not specifically using a card. So I'm going to make a specific trip to store because I need to buy fresh milk and bread and vegetables, for example, not because I've got a loyalty card. What loyalty cards do though, funnily enough, is encourage specific retailer loyalty. So again, coming back to our question, I do most of my grocery shopping or most of my shopping at this retailer. Yeah, funnily enough, when you use a loyalty card, you get much more agreement with that statement. So 53 versus 40. So yes, they will encourage shoppers to go to a specific store. I think we've got a few more questions popping up there.
We have, yeah. It was just Marcel was asking about Gen Z versus Boomer loyalty card use. So we're not looking at that now, but we did have that fact in the deck earlier on, Marcel. So we're looking at just all shoppers split by whether they use a loyalty card or they don't, or an app and but whether they don't. In terms of Sophia's point, I guess it's just a statement really, isn't it? She surely we'll just have loyalty cards for multiple retailers, so shop between retailers. And I think that's certainly what I think. Yeah,
that's what most people do, isn't it?
Certainly what I think. The loyalty card use does differ, of course, when we look across our data set. Tesco has the highest loyalty card usage, 84% of shoppers saying they use Tesco shoppers saying they use loyalty card. Then it's Sainsbury's at 79%, and things like online grocery, for example, about 68%. So it can vary quite considerably. Tesco having the highest.
Good. Okay. So moving on from there then. So yeah, it does encourage loyalty, and it also does drive intention and engagement. So again, looking at users of a loyalty card versus non-users in terms of all the purchases, then what we see is that there's a much higher percentage who plan to buy. Things like pre-store promotional triggers, so things like seeing an advert or something on the internet or social media, much more likely to influence if you use a loyalty card. And engagement, so willing and wanting to browse, much more likely to be the case if you're using a loyalty card versus not. So there's some intention and engagement that the loyalty card drives. And of course, loyalty card specific offers help. I mean, this is what it feels like the loyalty cards are all about right now. So if we look at some of our metrics around promotions and offers, so does a good promotion drive me to store? Does it drive the trip? Yes, significantly more agreement with that for loyalty card users. Do I buy extra because of the promotions I see? Yes, significantly more likely to see that if you're using a loyalty card. And did I only buy because of the promotion, so it's persuaded me to buy anyway? Yes, again, significantly more likely to see that if you're using a loyalty card.
So Marcel makes that point in the chat actually about use driven by discount unlock. I think this is the facts that definitely seem to back that up, and there's a bit more as well as we'll go through.
Where it gets interesting, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
But certainly, drives that kind of promotional uptake behaviour. I mean, I think the conclusion we can probably make from that, and certainly the conclusion I would make from that, is that yes, clearly a loyalty scheme impacts the shoppers, but it really seems like the main focus of these is all about price and nothing else. So, it's kind of club card price, nectar price, more card prices, whatever it may be, seems to be the real focus of these cards as much as driving loyalty. So the natural conclusion, therefore, would be, all right, so that must mean that when you use a loyalty card, you're really happy with prices. But that isn't actually the case, interestingly. So when you dig into the data and you look at users of loyalty cards versus those that don't use a loyalty card, actually at a total level, price satisfaction is exactly the same. And interestingly, specifically, so price satisfaction is made up of some of these metrics here on the right. So specifically, just great prices, satisfaction's better in non-users. Offers, and we just talked about the fact that they kind of do influence the loyalty card user. Now the satisfaction is better there, but then again, EDLP satisfaction better with non-loyalty card users than it is with loyalty card users. So something really interesting, I think, going on there.
That's fascinating, isn't it? I had a look in more detail at this as well, because obviously having a look at these numbers and you think, okay, well, this is the total market. Well, and you've got discounters. Generally, shoppers are more happy with the price there. They play a role potentially in these numbers, right? So it could be skewing it. But actually, I just had a look at grocery mults, and actually see it's even more marked in grocery mults, interestingly, in that loyalty card users for the ongoing prices, satisfaction 70, and for non-loyalty card users it's 74. So actually the non-loyalty card users are happier with ongoing price in the mults than loyalty card users. They're also happier with non-loyalty card users are happier with promotions, and then in terms of sort of fixed low price, that comes through the same level of satisfaction in the mults, albeit that's quite low. It's 54% for both. So it's fascinating, and it's really, whilst it's all about price and people are buying into them and seeking out these prices, another thing to back that up is that we know that loyalty card users are actually more influenced by pricing retail media because we can look into that as well. So they're clearly tuned into them, but it might be having whilst they're tuning into it, it might be having a converse effect, which is basically, well, if it's not one of these deals, then maybe it's not as good. Whereas the loyalty card users, non-loyalty card users, aren't really necessarily buying into that so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, we debated on this one quite a while, didn't we? And I made that point at the bottom there that maybe it's because those loyalty card prices offers are so strong, it almost creates a perception that without that, my retailers' prices are high because I'm getting like 50% discount if I use my loyalty card. If I don't use my loyalty card, it's that much more. So generally, I think their prices are not great. It's just luckily I've got a loyalty card, which means I can save the money, and that could potentially be having some of that impact.
Just a couple of questions, Marcel, again, maybe those happy with price, regardless of loyalty cards, or shopping in Aldi and Lidl. Well, that's kind of why I look specifically at the mults and what shoppers were saying in the mults, and that these are shoppers who have bought in the mults rather than bought in discounters when they've done the work, when we've got the responses for them. So it's isolating mults from discounters.
But we also, do see generally let's just remember that Lidl has a very strong loyalty app offer for prices. Yeah. And also don't forget, and we didn't mention this, but our data is weighted on retailer level. So the bigger retailers will influence more.
And Laura, I'm really glad you asked that question, because when I was looking into the mults satisfaction, we can look across retailers as well. And interestingly, where the highest loyalty card usage is highest, we see the least satisfaction with ongoing price, i.e. Tesco.
Interesting. Okay, let's move on because we don't want to run out of time. We'll switch a little bit now from the loyalty cards onto brands and PL, because maybe then, as I said at the start, maybe brands can help them, because we've all must have noticed this in store now. We're seeing this kind of explosion of retail media around branded bays and category branded bays and what have you. If we split the shopper group into brand shoppers, people who bought a brand versus people that buy PL, then we've just added some retail media questions into our data set, and we can see that those that are influenced, those unplanned shoppers, so I only decided to buy once I got to store, who are influenced by a brand or category signage around the shelf, are higher in brand shoppers. So branded shoppers are more likely to be influenced by retail media. Maybe that means that we should be thinking and focusing more on attracting branded shoppers, right? And certainly if we look at those branded shoppers, again, we're comparing them to PL shoppers, we can see that engagement metric is higher. So there's a much higher willingness to browse if you're buying brands than there is if you're buying PL, would be our first factor. And a real strength for branded shoppers, or for brands generally, is that they do definitely drive that premium and innovation agenda. So if we look at some of our agreement metrics, so we're looking at agreement with these statements. I'll sometimes buy extra to try new and different. So innovation, essentially, much stronger agreement amongst branded shoppers. I don't mind paying more for better quality, so premium, I'll trade up. Again, much stronger agreement with that statement for branded shoppers. So these branded shoppers, they're engaged, they're spending more time, they're willing to buy a bit more to try something new, they're willing to trade up to something which is better quality. They sound like really good shoppers, right? Then if we look at where PL has its strength, it comes back to this loyalty thing that we've already talked about a couple of times. So PL, I do most of my grocery shopping at this retailer. PL shoppers are much more likely to be saying, yeah, I do, I stick to that shopper. So when it comes to kind of driving loyalty, the private label shoppers are giving us a bit of strength there. And their purchase intention is much stronger. So PL shoppers, 83% plan to buy versus branded shoppers, 78%. So they're more likely to be intentional about their purchase. So there's kind of things on both sides, if you like, in terms of strengths and weaknesses. And interestingly, PL shoppers are definitely less certain about quality. Now, what we've got here is two quality measures in terms of how important they are to shoppers. And these are significantly higher for those buying private label. So quality is more important, freshness is more important, where relevant, obviously. What we're saying, therefore, then, is that branded shoppers, they place less importance on quality because there's already that inherent trust. It's a brand I know, I trust that it's good quality. So this could be a real opportunity for PL, and it's kind of what PL, I guess, is all about. It's trying to demonstrate that quality and not just focus on the price aspect. So focusing here is definitely going to be a really good tool for PL. As we round out this section, and I'll whiz through those last bits just to keep us up to time. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I've said kind of, is it one or the other? But in reality, it is not perhaps, but it is really about a good mix. And that's where the success comes from in this arena. So brands, yes, they can definitely help drive growth through that, things like innovation and premium. But don't forget, people are tempted to buy elsewhere with brands. They're not going to be quite so loyal. The loyalty aspect comes more from things like private label, which is driving that. But it's harder then to get that trade up and basket spend growth because they're not as comfortable with quality and so forth. And then loyalty schemes, yes, they're driving that intentional behaviour. So they're also really important as a facet of this. But there is a risk that what we're seeing right now, really, which is that there's just this focus on that loyalty scheme being all about price and not about other things. I saw some interesting stuff. I think it was in the Grocer the other day about Waitrose and some things they're doing, and they're kind of adding in these Waitrose rewards now. So if you spend a certain amount with your loyalty card, you then get to pick rewards, which is interesting as a different way of encouraging loyalty than just saying you're going to get cheap prices. So it'll be interesting to see if some of that changes as well.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting. It is, I mean, I like equilibrium. It's about a balance, isn't it? That's
yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
That makes me happy. That makes me happy that that's the case. We've had a couple of questions around going back to the price satisfaction piece for the loyalty cards. Is it reflective of consumer demographic and price sensitivity? Well, we can look into that. We don't have the answers for that now, Laura, but we can look into that. Ellie's asked a question about whether there are categories where PL is more important to the retailer than others. Absolutely. Yeah, we understand all of that as well. And then what have we asked, Simon? You've asked about interesting to look at more insights where brands drive category growth. Yeah. I think that was so on the point there, concerning. Actually, no, I don't think it is concerning. Remember what we're saying there is that actually I think that importance on quality and fresh for PL is reflective of the fact that within branded shoppers, actually there's an element of assumption that it's there, although they still need to deliver, because if they don't deliver, then clearly the shopper's gonna move away from it.
That's the key bit there, because don't forget, Simon, what we were looking at was how important those things are, not necessarily whether it's being delivered. So we haven't shown data, which we could have done, on whether brands are delivering it better than PL.
And Alex has made a point about, sounds like Waitrose have copied Lidl. Well, I have to say, I think they've all copied each booth up in the north. So for somebody who lives in the north, Booths, fantastic supermarket up here.
All right, I think it's time for our little break, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, lots of insights shared there. So let's all have a little mental break before we move into the last section. Let's decide what we do with that in a second. Quiz time. Promised some amazing prizes. These are the prizes that are available. First prize, £100 Amazon voucher. Second prize, £50 Amazon voucher. And if you are a supplier or a retailer, we will give you a department overview across the full path to purchase. That's an amazing prize. That's got so much data into it. We wouldn't normally give this away, but it's not often that we run webinars like this. There's a quick overview of all of the metric areas that we cover, and that what you would get within that department overview. That's the first and second prize.
I didn't know you were going to give away that amount of money. That's crazy.
It is crazy, but it's a one-off. So let's just do it. Here's how it is going to work. Give an experiment. The first person to write the correct answer into the chat wins. Second person gets second prize. Really quite simple. Here's the thing. I'm going to share on the next slide. I'm going to share the part of the question. Then I'm going to share the rest of the question and the answers. And the answer that you put into the chat needs to be reflected exactly how it is on the slide. So no time for fat-fingered typos. Guys, have I explained that well, do you think?
Fastest finger. There's going to be a load of answers on the next page. One of them will be the right answer. Pick which one you think it is and write it in the chat really quickly. Yeah?
Simple as that.
Show host.
Here we go. Missed my calling, didn't I? Here it is. Which category?
Oh!
Better guess already.
5 categories for its ability to
People were listening. It's there. Got it.
derive loyalty.
If you remember before the names come up there, then that's pretty damn good.
That was amazing.
And it was Dan, and then it was Ethan.
That's insane. Wow. I'm sure that answer was before you even said drive loyalty as well. So give him the actual answer.
I don't know how that happened, but hey, there we go. Maybe we can click ahead in the slides. I don't know. Anyway, there we go. We'll honour those prizes. It is fresh pork, so congratulations to the winners. Send me an email. I'll put my email into the chat and I'll pin it to the top. Send me an email and I shall respond to that with your
first and second, basically.
First and second.
Which is
I've got a feeling people could go ahead in the
You messed that up, didn't you? Yeah.
Oh, if you've gone ahead, you can't. We can't accept it. You have to tell us.
In all honesty, if you've gone ahead and you can still feel comfortable with yourself after cheating so blatantly.
Yeah. Right.
Oh God. Well, this is the way of the world these days. So
he's just using his initiative there, isn't he?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Okay. So there is my email address in the chat, and I'll pin that to the top.
We need more help from the chat now, don't we? Because we don't have time to do premiumisation and the growth of snacking.
No, we're running out of time. So look, let's make a call on this. Let's decide which one of these next sections are we going to continue with, and then what we'll do is we'll run another webinar in a couple of weeks' time. And I'm going to put a poll up. If you give me a couple of seconds.
I'm already getting loads of requests.
It's stopping me. I can't access the poll.
I can't count that many people. It's a lot of premiumisation, but.
I'm trying to get to the
someone's written premiumisation and snacking. That's cheating.
We will do the other one at a later date, so don't worry if we don't cover it today.
Right.
We will.
I'm trying to launch the poll, but there's too many things there. There we go. Got it. No, too many things popping up. When you're all finished, is the poll up?
It is now. There you go.
Yes. Now you can
look at it go.
Do you
like premiumisation? Growth of snacking won't lose out because we'll do a little bit more detail on that one in the next webinar.
Yeah.
So premiumisation, crack on, Chris. I'm going to set up another webinar for the 2nd of October, and we're going to do snacking in detail. And I'll put the details into the chat.
Thank you. Right, let me take back control and move us on then. So we'll look at premiumisation. Sorry to anyone who said snacking, but as Mike said, we'll go through that in another webinar in a couple of weeks' time, and we may even do a little bit more detail on it. So actually, it'll be the most detailed of these 4 sections. So you might actually be winning by having to wait for it. So premiumisation and the cost of living crisis. That is our final section for today. I mean, you know, without wanting to start off on a depressing note, I think there's no mistaking we're definitely still in a cost of living crisis. You look at headlines, and I just snipped a couple from the BBC the other day. It's all pretty doom and gloom and talking about rising inflation and shrinking economies and taxes going up. So certainly there's no mistaking that is still the case. And if you look at inflation, then you can see, you know, prices are still rising, and that clearly affects the way we shop. So that has something that we've continued to see over the last year. And we've talked about it in the past in a webinar, in one of our webinars last year. Generally what happens, as you know, when you've got this kind of stuff going on, is that people will adapt their behavior in some way, and that's usually or generally one of these two things. You start buying less to save money, or you try to pay less for the stuff you're buying. So doing things like looking for more promotions, trading down to cheaper alternatives, buying bigger packs that save you money in the long run, those kind of things. So this is what we saw in 2024, that there were these two behaviours essentially going on due to that. Has that changed? Well, it has changed. I mean, we still see 62% of people adapting in some way, so doing this buy less, pay less type behaviour, but it is down 6% overall, more of a decline in buy less than there is in pay less, but both are down, and that's 6% generally overall. So it is becoming less of a thing, but still the vast majority, the larger group, are what we'll call adapters for the sake of the next few slides.
We start seeing this sort of behaviours come out at Credit Crunch, for those of us who can remember Credit Crunch time.
Showing our age now.
Way back then. And it's, I guess, behaviours, sort of a shopper behaviour has been a bit like a sort of pendulum swinging one way or another, depending on what the prevailing economic conditions are. I think what's interesting now is that high number of adapters still, it's become so ingrained, this behaviour now, in terms of people are much more know what they want to do. It does vary by category, of course. There's some categories that are less affected, but overall, that's definitely become ingrained behaviour.
I think you're right. We were talking about this, weren't we? In that, it's the whole. It started out in the Credit Crunch, and we started talking about the savvy shopper, and people kind of doing this sort of stuff. And you're right, it's become ingrained. And we were just theorising about the next one of these things, which is probably this whole. It's not the topic of this section, but just to note it, it's probably this whole kind of ultra processed food versus natural food thing, where we're starting to see that becoming more prevalent as an action, and will it get like this eventually, where it just becomes part of the ingrained behaviour that I'm going to look for non-UPF, non-HFSS, all that kind of stuff. So very interesting, yeah. So adapters, as I say, they're the larger group. What do they do? Let's take a quick look at some of the data and split it by adapters versus those that aren't making any changes. Well, adapters likely to spend more time shopping. So normally we'd be saying more engaged, but I think what you'd probably say is that they're taking more time because they are adapting. So they're looking for those deals. They're looking, maybe comparing, price per kilo, that sort of stuff, and making sure they're getting the best deals. So they are significantly more likely to browse, and they're much more likely to be influenced before the trip. So obviously planning is going to come into that. But if we look at our pre-store planned purchase triggers, so what we would classify, if you like, as promotional triggers that may influence you when you get into store. So things like seeing stuff in a catalogue or a magazine, seeing an advert, internet, social media, having coupons. All of those are much more likely to be key purchase triggers for adapters than they are for those that don't make any change. So it's quite significant that they are going to be influenced before the trip by these kind of things. And obviously they'll hunt the deals wherever they are, basically. So significantly more likely to be buying on promotion. Again, that's one of the ways in which they're adapting, so not a huge surprise, but also significantly more likely to be buying from a display. So hunting it out wherever it is in the store, actively looking for those displays. Interesting then when you think about communication and the kind of things you might use on displays to influence. If we know that it's more likely to be somebody who's adapting, who's going to pick that up, then maybe that has an influence on how we actually communicate on that display. But certainly significantly more likely to be doing those things. But interestingly, whilst they will be adapting to try PL, because that's one way of saving some money, is to go for a cheaper option, they're actually generally less happier with it. In terms of, I've tried PL and I would definitely buy it again. Adapters, about 75%, about 3/4 will say that, but that's as high as 80% for those that aren't making any change during this, due to this cost of living crisis.
Chris, just going to say, Chris, quickly, Martin, sorry, we come to the end of the allotted time. Let's carry on and finish the section. After post-event, the chat's going to be remaining open. The deck I'm going to share, and I'm also going to share a recording of everything. So anyone who misses anything and needs to leave can catch up on that last section. Carry on.
Beautiful. Only
Thanks,
6
Mike.
slides left, so not much.
Just on Stephen. Stephen says, please remind what percentage of buyers of the adapter group. Is it 62%?
62% it was, yeah. 62%.
So it
is the vast majority. It is the vast majority, as you said. There is this little thing about PL. They will try it. But a watch out, I guess, for PL for retailers it comes back to that quality thing we were talking about before, making sure that it does deliver. If it's cheaper, that's one thing, but it's got to deliver on the quality, which, as Martin said before, if it's food and drink, taste, quality of ingredients, that type of stuff, or efficacy. So there's some things to think about there.
Irene's raised, please share a little bit more about adapters. I guess what we shared earlier was how the adapters can behave. And again, that will vary, in terms of buying less or paying less, and whether the different strategies within that. The overwhelming strategy is looking for more promotions, isn't it? And actually, which is linked to this slide, because actually we also have look to buy cheaper options. And interestingly, it's about 10% roughly, 1 in 10 looking for cheaper options. Is that right, Chris? Oh, there you go. Yeah,
15%. I'll just jump back to that slide just to remind. This is this whole slide is the adapters, right? Either buying less or paying less, and they represent 62% currently of shoppers across the total market in all categories. So that's where we're at. So just moving back to where we were on those adapters, we've talked about this, but they're less satisfied with PL. You kind of put all that there and you think, well, is there an opportunity for premiumisation still then? Because there's so much of us doing this adapting, trying to pay less, trying to buy less, etc. But actually, when you break it down, 35% of shoppers are not doing anything differently, which is an increase of 12% for a lot of percentages here. But so there is a group that are not changing, and that group is growing. So that's something we need to remember, which suggests that probably premiumisation is an opportunity. And if we look at the importance of premium and map it over the last 10 years, it's grown significantly, and it's on a steady growth trend. So is how important premium is to me when I'm shopping. That has grown steadily over time, and this is an all category total market view, obviously.
When you look at whether people are willing to pay more for premium products, then actually that has grown over time as well. So whilst it's important, it's necessary to demonstrate that premiumness, and if you can, then people are willing to pay more for them. But that's since 2023. So actually, there was a little, certainly right at the start of cost of living, there was it leveled out that metric in terms of shoppers were actually saying that they weren't they didn't want to pay more for premium. They wanted premium, but they didn't want to pay more for it, whereas it started to grow again. Importance to who? It's to shoppers. We're all talking about shoppers here all the way through,
shoppers.
And in terms of the sticky behaviours, I mean, we capture levels of private label, trial, openness, all of that stuff. It varies very much by category, Helen. But I think actually what I'd say is I think we've tracked this for a while now, and there is always a pretty constant, it's growing, as Chris has said, it's growing, this unchanged, not really changing their behaviours. So there's an element of people who came through COVID, obviously slightly better off even, but certainly unwilling to, and been relatively unwilling to change their behaviours due to cost of living.
Good. Okay, let's finish up. We've just got a couple of slides left. So obviously, if we know that there is an increase in importance of premium for shoppers, then what we want to do is say, well, can we isolate that group of shoppers that tell us that premium is important specifically, and can we see what's unique about them and maybe develop some plans off the back of that? So just a couple of examples of that, just to finish this up. So now what we're looking at here, and I've brought this back to the very start of the webinar, interestingly, because let's remember what we said right at the start, those first couple of slides, is we know that that growing older population are the ones that hold the wealth. So when we think about premiumisation, maybe they are one group that we should be targeting with that premium opportunity. So if we look at this metric, I will look around and I'm open to trying something new. What we see is that older group are significantly more likely to say that. What we've got here as well is not just all boomers, we've got boomers for whom premium is important. So these are people who are saying premium is really important to me and I'm open to try to something new, versus Gen Z is saying the same thing essentially. So there is potentially an opportunity in that older generation. And equally, those boomers are also less brand loyal. So we look at switch behaviour and we set and see what proportion shoppers, and again, this is shoppers for whom premium is important, are saying, I will switch brand if I can't find my choice. If I come in, I'm looking for something I can't find, I'm going to switch brand. That goes up to 26% for boomers versus Gen Zers in this target group. So they're more likely to be switchers, which is something that we need to be aware of, I think.
You really don't want to annoy them in store then, do you? You want to make sure,
definitely not.
You want to make sure what they want is there
Definitely.
and visible.
Definitely, yeah. And then finally, just to close it out, just looking at that innovation theme, if we look at satisfaction with innovation across that same group, so this is, again, it's just to reiterate, it's shoppers for whom premium is important amongst these two groups, we see a significantly lower satisfaction for boomers with innovation. So we know that they're saying, I'm open to trying something new. We know that they'll switch, more likely to switch brand if they can't find their choice. But what we also know is they're less happy with innovation. So there's kind of an opportunity immediately there. Obviously, what we do then is we drill down into the categories and we see where that's particularly being driven. But just to give you a flavour there of how we can kind of carve out an opportunity from that. That, I'm afraid, is where we will have to end as we have run out of time.
Yeah, perfect. Can you just put it onto the last couple of slides for us?
Sure.
The deck for today's session, I'm just putting that into the chat now. That's the deck from today's session. The next webinar on the 2nd October, it's pinned to the top of the chat. There's loads more resources available on our website, so have a look. Might be some of the answers to some of the questions you had on this webinar. And what else? The chat's going to stay open, so hopefully the recording will also drop into the chat post-event. Continue to use the chat, and we'll also go through the questions. If there's anything that we have missed or we can go into any more depth, we'll give you an answer within that.
Thanks for all the questions.
Yeah,
it's been brilliant.
Absolutely.
Amazing engagement. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining. Cheers now.
Super stuff. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.